this year, our church, this church, Decatur Foursquare Church, celebrates its 90th anniversary. What we are celebrating is really not just the life of the church over 90 years, not just the things that we've participated in and done well over 90 years, or the things that we've survived, but we're celebrating the life that Jesus has started to grow, the life that Jesus has planted in this community, the faithfulness of the kingdom of God, the people of this church over those years, and the families and the connections that have grown throughout the community from this church. And so we've got with us some guests today, and we're going to speak to them and ask them some questions, and you know them well. And many of you maybe have never had the chance or opportunity to meet them, but let me tell you, they have seen a lot. They've witnessed the Lord be faithful, and they've got some stories. And so I want to ask Wanda, Ardith, just starting with the two of you as women who've been in this church your whole life, right? Most of your lives, if not your whole life. Will you tell us how it began? How do you remember? What do you recall of family life back when you were children here at Foursquare? What was it like as kids for you at this church?
Do you want to start?
I can remember the tin tabernacle and the sawdust floors.
And I can too.
And I remember the people would gather around the front and pray. And there was many, many slain in the spirit as they prayed. It was a beautiful service. It seems like I remember Sister Amy being there once. I'm not real sure about that, but that was dated way back, and
Yeah, I couldn't remember whether she had been or not.
I think she was once.
She might have been. He was.
Yeah,
Ralph
he
Her
was.
son was.
Yeah.
Yes.
Ralph
Yes.
certainly was.
Yes, he was here.
Yes.
Back then, we had Sunday morning, Sunday night, Wednesday night prayer meeting, and Friday night divine healing service. And we were there for all of them.
We was all there at every service.
Yep. My dad started 3 churches in the area. So the first 2 churches, they just went on Sunday night, and my mother taught the young adults. And so we went here all the time. And I remember, especially when we got into the new building, Wanda's dad and my uncle were always the very last 3 up there praying. They were praying longer than anybody, and they really were reaching the Lord.
So we have 2 sisters here, and then 3 lifelong friends.
Right.
We have Sharon and Wanda, our sisters.
Lois.
I'm sorry, Lois and Wanda, our sisters.
And Sharon's
Thank
my
you.
sister. who
And
isn't
then
here.
Ardith and her sister Sharon, who's not with us today, but we've all looked at pictures, and some of these pictures you'll see as we celebrate the 90 years of this church, the life of this church. And you'll look in the front rows and you'll see a little dark-headed girl and another little girl right next to her, and then you'll see Ardith over here and her sisters over there. You'll see the life of these people lived out in these pictures. Can you, any of you 3 here today with me, just describe for me what a Sunday morning service was like back in those days, from childhood to when you were teenagers and even young adults? So describe for me 50 years ago or 60 years ago what a Sunday morning service was like here at Decatur Life Foursquare Church. Decatur Foursquare Church.
Yeah, they had a cradle roll department when I was really young. My mother taught in the cradle roll for
Yep, she did.
40-some years.
The cradle row, nursery.
Nursery, but she taught in like 1st grade.
Oh, first grade. Okay.
Yeah. I was in the nursery, but I don't remember much about that.
Yeah.
And the tin tabernacle had a ballroom in the back of it, and the women would sit back there with their babies, but they could see what was going on, but they couldn't hear very good.
No. But later on, when they built the new church, there was what they called the ballroom, and that's where they would go, and they could hear the sermon, but people couldn't hear the kids crying. A Sunday morning service, of course, you had Sunday school first, and then you had a song service, and then usually you would have someone sing a special number. The choir would usually have something special they would sing, and then we would have the sermon, and then a time of prayer.
We had a band too.
Oh yeah, well that's right. We did have a band. We had
Mm-hmm.
they called it the orchestra.
Mm-hmm.
They had an orchestra right up in front.
Whoever wanted to play in it could.
Good. They just brought their instrument and started.
Yeah.
Really, whoever wanted to play just
Could
brought their
play.
instrument
That's right.
and jumped up
Yeah,
in there.
that's right.
That's right.
That's right. And
How-
whoever wanted to sing could sing.
Really,
And we were in the choir.
that's awesome.
Yeah.
So let me ask you a question. I'd like for each of you, if you're comfortable, to answer just what you really believe. What do you attribute the growth of the church over the years to? If there was one ingredient, one thing that stands out to you, what has caused this church to be something as you've seen it through good times and bad times, right? And there's been both. You've seen ups and downs in this church.
I think Sunday school added a lot, brought a lot of people in because there was a lot of children. The parents came because of that. They had activities for them, and I think that helped the growth of the church.
Well, I also remember they were always canvassing the neighborhood,
That's right.
and they had tracts they passed out, inviting everybody to church in quite a large area, and they would do that on a regular basis. And then, of course, prayer is the most important thing.
Yeah.
Both
So-
of our dads were prayer warriors.
Yep.
My dad prayed at church and her dad did, our dad did too. They'd be one of the last ones up there, and he would go in his prayer closet at home. Reminded me yesterday, she said, Dad used to pray so long and so loud. She said, I'd be embarrassed when my girlfriends come, afraid that they'd hear him. Because he just didn't play quiet.
You'd go to his closet and
Yeah.
pray. Yeah.
Every day.
Amen. Well, I'll tell you, that seems to be a very lost skill anymore.
Yeah.
And I don't know why it's happened that way, but the most important thing we can do is pray. But it seems to be oftentimes that it's the last thing we do.
Mm-hmm. That's true.
As a church, I'm not saying as individuals necessarily, but as a church, sometimes we come to the place where we don't emphasize and value, how do we reach our community? We're in a series, the whole emphasis of the year, and part of this celebration is making Jesus known, coming back to some of the roots, the foundations of what this church is about. And none of it is ever going to happen outside of prayer. It's got to be bathed in prayer. The foundations of it have to be prepared through prayer. But that's almost something that we have to re-engage teaching. We have to teach people how to pray.
Right, yeah, I
I can
think-
tell you how many people I speak with, and they just are uncomfortable knowing how to pray or how to approach the Lord. Wow.
Another thing that they did regularly was we had plays, Christmas play, old-fashioned Christmas play. And I can remember one Thanksgiving morning in the old tin tabernacle, they had pilgrims. They were all dressed up like pilgrims, and they carried their guns over
they?
their shoulder and walked down the aisle singing. A lot of people came out, just things like that, yeah.
I saw a clipping as we go through the archives and we see stuff. One thing I noticed about this church, and we moved here, Lynn and I moved here 10 years ago as the youth pastors. And so a lot of stuff that I encounter is new to me. I didn't know it. I didn't know that you guys built a Christmas tree and dressed up like a Christmas tree
Oh
and
yes,
got
cold.
out there with lights and became a
Oh.
huge choir Christmas tree.
So cold.
But how
And that was every night.
forward thinking is that? That's like
Yeah.
using your mind to that's like some ingenuity going on right there. Let's do something big that no one else is doing. It seems to me that this church did a lot of that.
Yeah,
They did.
Like
Yeah,
they
that-
pushed the boundaries of things. One of the things that was just so reaffirming to Lynn and I, a couple years before David and Lori retired, Lori asked us to dream up at what this church would look like in 10 years. And so we did that, and we wrote it down for them. And Lori brought to us later a piece of paper that they'd found in her dad's Bible. In the 40s or in the 50s, late 40s, early 50s, Dr. Erickson was thinking indoor pools in retirement communities and soccer fields and all different kinds of activity centers and sports centers and all this kind of stuff for a church. How ahead of his time was he, right?
Right.
And so when I look back at some of that and I think, well, where are we at today? I think, we need to get back to that place where we're hearing from the Lord so clearly that it scares people, right?
That's right.
I'm sure he showed that to some people back in the 50s and they thought, you're crazy, I don't know what you're thinking, but
yeah.
yeah.
You probably would have run into a little.
Yeah, some bumps, huh? And so
Quite a
some
few
of that,
bumps.
let's get back to the place where, and that's part of our legacy as this church's legacy is pushing the envelope. It's doing things that other people might not do, to be honest with you. I've seen it time and time again through newspaper clippings and through events that y'all did years ago.
When I was looking for some papers or pictures, I had an article at our church. I think you maybe was here. Steve had women and the men all write something for Mother's Day.
Yeah.
And my son had written one, and he said he was thankful that they had parents that brought him to church every time the church was open, and
Amen.
that's how he found Jesus as his personal Savior. And that was really, that's the way it was.
Mm-hmm.
We went every service, Sunday morning, Sunday night, Wednesday night, Friday night.
Amen. You know, this church has always been known as a mission-minded church with a lot of emphasis on reaching those that don't know Jesus yet. Why do you think, you guys know and understand the origins of the church, starting from a tent revival or starting from a revival, but why do you think that is such a vital part of the mission of the church? Evangelism, missions. We've got plaques all over the office about most missions money given in a single year, blah blah blah. All this stuff that is just awesome stuff that was celebrated. It's part of the legacy of who we are. But even today we go, we send, you present a need to this church and this church meets the need. But why do you think that is such a vital part of who we are? The evangelism and the missions.
Well, it's always been that way for us. When we were growing up, in addition to your tithe, you would pledge so much a month to missions, and that was a separate offering. So it's always been very, very important. It's go ye into all the world to preach the gospel. It's just the way it's always been, I guess.
Now, Ardith, you had mentioned that your dad helped plant some churches.
Right.
And so those churches locally, are they in the central Illinois
One was
area?
at Niantic. It's still growing, very, very small, and Lake Fork, Illinois, which isn't. And then I was already grown when he started the church in Harristown, which is still going on. But I think I was 6 years old when he started the church in Lake Fork.
And was your dad a pastor?
Yes. But like I said, they just had service on Sunday night, and then we always attended here on Sunday morning, Wednesday night, or Friday night. So
That's awesome. In my mind, see, evangelism and missions are the same exact thing. They just happen in different places.
Yeah.
And so the idea that this, I think from the beginning of this church, I certainly know with Amy You know, you go to Angelus Temple and you look on the cornerstone and it says committed to worldwide interdenominational evangelism.
Mm-hmm.
We don't care who. If you're preaching Jesus, we'll partner with you.
Mm-hmm.
And we'll make sure that people find Jesus. And that happens on the mission field, but it also happens in our own community. And this church, part of the foundation and certainly part of the legacy has always been to seek and save the lost.
That's right.
And to help make disciples of Christ. What do you think of the family aspects? Like, how have you guys seen fellowship throughout your family and throughout the years you've been involved with the church? What role has fellowship taken and friendship?
Well,
One of the big things was the 4th of July picnic. We all loved that. And spent it the whole afternoon there, played games, and the kids would do their thing and they'd get all excited about it and everybody would go watch them, and it was a neat time.
another thing, the youth used to get together every Saturday night in the basement of the old church and play ping pong and play board games and have snacks. So that gave the youth something to do every Saturday night, and that was always a big thing.
What was that lady's?
But you develop
That
lifelong
lady's group my
friends.
mother used to go to. She went to
You
a
do.
ladies group.
UFW.
Yeah.
We had UFW then.
UFW.
Where the ladies got
United
together.
Foursquare Women.
Yes.
UFW, United Foursquare Women.
That's
I
right.
like it.
That's right.
They made articles for Christmas to sell, and
Awesome.
I imagine they went to the mission.
Yeah, they did a lot of stuff to send to the mission
Mhm.
fields.
So you make lifelong friends, and I think that more than anything, and really that is one of the real blessings of having the three of you here today. Is, you know, I'm 43, so a lot of the people that you guys know well, like I look up to them as like heroes. They're friends of yours, you know, like Dr. Helms and Winona. I mean, Dr. Helms is like. He's like Wyatt Earp. He's like some big cowboy. He's
He's
like John
wonderful.
Wayne, you know.
Just wonderful, yeah.
And but he's the kindest, gentlest guy. He's a wonderful man.
They say laughter is good medicine, and he saw that people laughed.
And so those kind of relationships over the years
That's right.
are friends. They're friends of yours. They're people that you've done life with. They're connections you've made here at this church. And to look at, you know, we live in a time where if you don't like the color of the carpet anymore, if you don't like the volume of the music, you just find a different place to go. And so much of the value of fellowship comes through relationship. It comes through lifelong relationship and commitment to one another.
One thing that Dr. Helms did when he was here, he would interview people. He'd have a story to tell on this or that. He'd bring them up and interview them. And one of the things that hit home with us, my husband is an only child, and Winona was an only child, and they decided one day they'd adopt each other. So he had our families go up to the front of the church, and church interviewed us about that, and came up with, you don't have to be lonely. Adopt a grandma or grandpa or somebody, but he always had a story to go with it. That was kind of neat.
Well, listen, there's lots of, you know, we've had our special three guests with us, but there's lots of families in our church that have been around for a long time. I think of Art and Rose Nichols. I think of Jim and Lonnie Newcomb, who
Right.
have been around and been a vital part of the life of this church for a long time.
And Barbara Mansfield.
And Barbara
She
Mansfield.
was here for a long time. Her family, they weren't at the very beginning, but not too long after the church started. They were the Boyd family. They were, and the Benner family were
Yeah, the Benners.
a long time also. The church a long time.
You see, sometimes, especially, you know, you go through shifts and changes, and culture changes, and life changes, and your church does too. But part of remembering the legacy and celebrating the legacy is celebrating what those years of ministry have produced. And many of the people and much of the fruit of what those years of ministry have produced are sitting right here. It's produced people who love the Lord and live a life that is vital to the life of the church. And so as we celebrate that legacy, I want to make sure and mention those people like Jim and Lonnie and Art and Rose and the Benners and many other families. But I also want to thank you guys, for sticking around, for allowing the Lord to use you in new ways as you go through changes. How many pastors can you remember from this church?
Oh, I don't know.
We always say to see every one of them
Lots,
go.
huh?
Yeah.
Yeah. And guess what? You might have more. I mean, you got lots of it.
Oh,
That
yeah.
kind of change happens.
We're getting kind of old.
You're
We
you're
might not
old
witness
yet,
it.
are you? Come on.
We might not. We
I
might
mean,
not.
Joe's old, but you're not old. I mean, come on.
Yeah.
One of the things that I remember about Reverend Sorensen, I was just real tiny then, and he had me come up and sing a solo once, and oil in my vessel, and he held my gum while I sang.
Did he give it back to you when you were done?
Probably.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Oh my.
One of the other things that I look forward to is summer camp.
Yeah, that's right.
We went every year, and when Bob and I were married, we were young, and the preachers tried to get him out of my cabin because he said the boys weren't allowed there. So Ruth and Jack Hunt was in the cabin next to us, and they verified that we were married.
Oh my goodness, they thought you were campers.
Oh, I see. Okay.
Yeah,
They
summer camp
monitored that good.
Oh, they really did.
is one of those things that are just it is so vital to the life of our young people and the future of our church. You know, when you think about the future of your church, it's your children and your grandchildren. That's the future of the church.
Yes.
And the people they bring to Jesus along with them.
That's right.
And so if you have Sterling, my father-in-law, has taught me a phrase. You know, a lot of time as a pastor, we encounter spiritual gifts in church and operation of the Spirit. And Sterling says it like this: "Man, the Spirit moves on a Sunday. It's a beautiful mess. It's a beautiful mess. You can't control it, and sometimes it causes some problems for you. As the pastor, it causes some problems for you, but you want it operating. It's beautiful. It's exactly how it's supposed to work. It's the operation of the Lord isn't contingent upon my ability to control it. God forbid that it would ever be something that but kids are kind of the same way.
Yeah.
Kids are like a beautiful mess.
Oh yeah. If you didn't have the kids, you have no growth.
It's
You
the
know,
it's
you
the
die. A lot of churches are dying, but they don't have young people.
they are dying.
We have young people, and on Sunday morning when they dismiss the kids, so many. It's a blessing.
It is a blessing, and
To
you
see
can
all
hear
the
them.
little ones.
Kids are noisy and kids are
That's
messy. and
fine.
Man, what a beautiful mess that
Just
is.
fine.
I got to tell you this story. My aunt Ballinger, she was with my dad, and they were church hunting before they started going to the Ford Square. And I won't tell you the name of the denomination they were at, but she said they were all down praying, and the preacher made them get up before they got too happy because he didn't want to speak in tongues. So she decided that wasn't the church that they were going to go to.
No, you want the life that comes from being led by the Spirit and the freedom to be part of how you gather together and how you live together. But I'll tell you, I just want to thank you guys, and I don't want to take any more of your time. I told you 15 minutes, and I probably doubled that already. But I just want you to know how much Lynn and I appreciate you. You guys have been good to us, and I know. Listen, Lynn and I are people who've been momentarily privileged to shepherd and care for this flock, and that's an honor for us. But you've made that easy, and we just want to thank you for that, and we love you guys. And we also want to thank you for sharing with us. You know, we weren't part of that great history, but we get to be part of it now. And And so many other people feel that way. People who've come in the last year or only been here a couple years, or people who've yet to come. They get to share in the legacy that you witnessed and that you were part of and that you helped build. All because you've opened the door for